Tom says, "Hey gang, thanks for the terrific podcast. You're all so inviting that it seems like a safe space to ask what might seem like an obvious question that's in the roots of the weeds." He says, "I'm wondering about drinking while on the bike." And he also says pupils dilate and Chad sits up.
If I may interject,
says,
I did read the question to that point and checked out and started looking up ethanol metabolism and thought, oh no, I got this one. And I didn't have anything good to share, nothing positive. It's all garbage, but I did want to get into this.
It's a mindset of where he's at. Nothing. Can't drink so it's not good.
Mindset matters.
Yeah. After that, none of these words registered, so I can't help you guys on this one.
He says, "Sorry, not that kind of drinking. From your podcast, I feel pretty comfortable with what to drink, how much, and how often. But my question is whether you have any tips or tricks on how to drink during tougher intervals. I'm always trying to manage my heart rate during these threshold or long VO2 max intervals by carefully controlling my breathing. But the second I take a drink, my heart rate spikes and I'm back to gasping for a short time. I understand the physiology behind this, but I'm wondering if you could share what you do. Frequent short sips timed with your breathing, which feels like many paper cuts," he says, "or just taking the hit from a big swig. Waiting for rest periods is fine, but you can't do that during a race. So I'd like to train to have an approach in races as well." He says, "Who'd have thought Thursdays would have become one of my favorite days of the week? Thanks for everything, from Tom."
Aw.
Yeah, that's a great one. Amber, you're a pro racer who has probably had to take drinks in super compromising positions too. Not only like you're breathing really heavy, but you're probably got riders going all over the place. How do you time? This seems like a really simple question, but I bet it's going to be an enlightening one for a lot of people. When do you drink? When you're doing an interval workout or during a race?
I strongly prefer to wait for rest intervals. So during a workout, I will sip during rest intervals, but I'll do that even if it's a 10-second or a 30-second rest interval, right? I won't have to wait for a 5-minute rest interval. And in a race, if it's not a solo time trial, if it's the mass start race, there are always moments in the race where the race slows down and you have even just a micro recovery. It might just be 5 seconds, 10 seconds. So one of the things that you can practice, surprisingly, is your proprioception. So knowing exactly where to reach to grab that bottle without looking and being able to put it back without looking and being able to do that quickly is a really great skill, because you can, the second you see, an attack's just been covered, there's a lull in the field, you can grab that bottle, take a swig, put it back super fast. And if you watch the pro peloton, you'll see these guys, and gals, grab their bottles super fast, take a swig, put it down. They're really, really fast and efficient with this. So it's less about managing heart rate, and it's actually more about your technique of being able to get the bottle out and put it back quickly. And that way you can be kind of like a little hydration sniper, right? The second you have that opportunity, you just grab it, you get the fluid down, and then you're back at it. And the better you get at that, the more you can take advantage of those micro recoveries to get a drink in. If you're on a solo TT and that's your event, then that's a different story. You still want to train that proprioception because you want to be really fast and efficient with that, because you don't want to break out of the aero position any longer than you need to. But there may be no way around that elevation in heart rate. But if you train that, okay, this is how it's going to feel, and I know that I'm going to recover from that. And then you can have that confidence that even that little perturbation in your heart rate isn't necessarily going to derail your pacing or derail your performance.
This is one of the reasons why I really like hydration packs for mountain biking and gravel events, because it's just less to do to drink. You can have that little that little hose right there, so then you can just drink whenever you need. And there's less to do with the whole operation, because you do get more efficient with it. I don't know if you've noticed too, when you switch bikes and you have different bottle cages, or that bottle cage is in a slightly different spot, or you switch bottles and for some reason it's different, it throws you off and suddenly it matters more. I kind of want to focus on one thing that Tom said here, where Tom said, I'm always trying to manage my heart rate during threshold or long VO2 max intervals by carefully controlling my breathing. I think that, so if this is something you haven't paid attention to before, Tom, and you're just really new to that concept and doing it, then it's a great thing to do. But if you feel like your focus, as soon as it shifts from breathing and it shifts from that it gets out of control, I would argue that you might be focusing a little too much on this. Because first of all, you're elastic. You don't have to be perfectly static. Your breathing rate can change and it can be briefly interrupted. This will happen in races. This will happen for many different, whether you swallowed a bug or whether anything happens, like you're going to have moments where you can't maintain perfect breathing, can't maintain that focus on maintaining your heart rate. It's okay. Don't worry about that changing. And if a drink messes that up, but then you return back to normal within a handful of seconds, that's also okay. So don't feel like everybody else out there is taking drinks and it's not affecting anything and you're the only one. If you're focusing too much on that breathing and making it absolutely perfect, that might actually come to become a hindrance if it's too much of a focus for you. But I, like Amber, in between intervals. In fact, I actually went through like a pretty long phase where I felt like if I didn't drink when I first started riding, so I would take a drink when I first started riding and I would almost get addicted to that and get terrified of dry mouth. And if I had a dry mouth, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I need to take a drink. But I got to a point where I actually kind of just forced myself through that initial reaction of, oh my gosh, I've got dry mouth. This is going to be like, I'm thirsty. I need to drink. And when I got through that, because I was still drinking a bottle an hour, so I'm still getting the amount of fluid that I need. But when I was able to push through that initial dry mouth response, it was like my body deconditioned that. And now I got to the point where I was like, you know what? If I'm breathing hard and a drink does sound good right now, but my interval doesn't end for 10 minutes, I'm fine. I'll make it through the 10 minutes. And then in that rest, I will drink. I'll be able to do it then. So I'd challenge, I mean, unless you're doing like 2-hour intervals or 1-hour intervals or something like that, I'd challenge the concept that you can't wait to be able to do it. You can take in a whole lot of drink in between those work intervals and that rest. How about you, Chad? You've done a ton of crit racing too, where you're like, getting drinks and stuff is also tricky because it removes your focus for a while.
Yeah, I think Amber basically covered it. In situations of high intensity and criteriums are there was a period of time where I couldn't imagine getting a drink during a criterium. But as you learn to relax, learn to move through the field better, aren't always attacking like I used to be all the time. But I mean, you find opportunities to eat and you do need to grease that groove, right? That movement pattern needs to be so familiar that it's basically an unconscious action. You just, you recognize the need for thirst, you recognize the opportunity to grab a drink. Before you know it, you've already done it, the bottle's back in the cage and you're still riding. So I think it definitely comes about with practice. And I do think when the option presents itself and you can ride with the hydration pack, that's absolutely the way to go. It's so easy, so much easier to stay on top of your hydration when you have a backpack and a hose hanging in your face.
I just noticed that Amber took a drink. It was her rest interval. She just
Chad was giving me a rest interval. He was taking the poll. I was getting a rest back here. I actually, a director of ours years and years ago, early on my career, used to get on the radio when we were racing with radios. And whenever there was a lull in the race and say, eat, drink, and be merry. And it just became this little mantra of mine. And so we would joke about it, but then it got to the point where we would say that to each other on the race radio. As soon as we realized that there was a lull where we didn't have to be really on point at that moment, one of us would get on the radio and remind everybody else, eat, drink, and be merry. And it's now this little recurring phrase in my mind. And I hear it. I say it to myself during workouts. I say it to myself during races. Like anytime there's just a lull in a moment, it's like, okay, eat, drink, and be merry. So that's the time to get your hydration in. If you need to, usually get your fuel in, and just those being mindful of those micro recoveries, even on a group ride or a long solo ride, just have a little, it can help to have a visual trigger or something that reminds you like, okay, you're chill right now, grab a bottle. And if it's on a group ride or something, if you see someone else take a bottle, take your bottle, right? Like allow yourself to use those visual triggers to remind yourself. But training the technique of it is definitely a very, very helpful way to approach it.
How often in the pro peloton do people attack when other people are drinking on purpose? I mean, I've done it where I see the rear camera. I didn't know someone was eating, but they were like eating a bar and it's like hanging in their mouth. It's really hard to follow someone when you only have one hand available, or you have it like dangling from your mouth and you can only breathe a certain way.
Yeah. Less effective in the pro peloton, because if somebody has a bar in their mouth or they're taking a drink, they'll just chuck it to follow the attack and then they'll go get something else from the team car later. So it's less effective. I would say that's less of a selection opportunity than, other aspects of the race.
I know it definitely happens in triathlon, in aid stations. Some people will just blow through aid stations because thinking it makes their the person who's running with them, this is on the run, that's why they're running, it makes them have to have a choice. Is I'm going to hydrate, or I'm going to try to stay with this person and not make the like the emotional rubber band
strategy.
snap. Yeah. And I kind of think of it as bad form to purposely wait for someone to take a drink to attack. But there's no rule against it. Do whatever you want.
We see
everybody's got to drink.
Mountain biking.
You should drink more earlier. Yeah.
At World Championships this year, we saw it plenty of times. Actually, all throughout the World Cups, whenever anybody went into a feed zone, like the other riders, or they would all go through the feed zone. Whenever somebody would take a bottle, they were attacking. I remember Nino doing this. I remember Vanderpool doing this. I remember, all of them, Matthias, like all of the men. And then you saw everybody trying to do it to Luana Lecomte, but it just simply didn't matter because she's too fast. But like, this is common and there are no rules against it. And in my opinion, it's fine. Like, go ahead and do it. I've never attacked somebody in a feed zone. I've never done that, but I absolutely would do it. Like if it's coming down to it and I want to race, like Amber said, I think it was last week, when you race, you're entering the arena of competition and there are rules that are written out and you don't want to transgress those rules, but you know, that happens. That's part of it. So you do have to be kind of wary. Like if you are taking a drink mid effort or you're doing like, I have attacked when people are drinking. And that's typically when after somebody attacks hard in a crit and then somebody is going to sit up, I know people are going to be relaxing, whether they're drinking or not. I know they're going to be relaxing. And that's when I hit them. That's why counterattacks are productive, right? Is because people have done something hard and they want relaxation. They want that thing. So catch them wanting while you are just, giving them exactly the last thing that they don't want.
You want to drink during like Amber said, the times where there's a big lull, and you don't want to be like what John said before is I have some dry mouth. If we're 1v1, we're in a breakaway, last lap on a crit, and you're stupid enough to like take a drink because you don't want dry mouth, where it's not going to impact your hydration at all. Like
you're going to lose.
Maybe I would. Yeah. Like don't be mad at the other person for doing that. You can say I have a rule against this, but how silly would that be if anytime someone attacked when someone else was drinking, everyone's like foul play. So I would not get that into your head as like, this is the way that it should be. Cause I've heard people say that, like, don't do that. But that's a tough way. Most of the times too, when people attack, you don't even see that the other person's drinking. Like I said, that rear camera, you don't even notice after the fact you have a camera. Just the time was right. And a lot of times, like John said, it's a lull. Not many times people attack where it's like, everyone's like at 110%. And then
which by the way is the best time to attack, just FYI.
When everyone's 110%.
Yeah.
Well, it's only if you're at 90 and they're at 110.
Exactly. Please, Amber, go ahead.
I was just going to clarify one point. So there is an unspoken rule of etiquette, which is to not attack in a feed zone. And that applies to road racing specifically. So it's not considered good form to attack in a feed zone. It's not against the rules. People absolutely do this. But it's like kind of frowned down upon, but that's different than attacking when some individual happens to be drinking or eating in the middle of the group at a point that's between the feed stations. I just wanted to make that clarification.
It's different in mountain biking, different in Ironman. Ironman, Macca's like knocking cups out of people's hands, almost like just taking every cup. So what happens in Ironman?
Flipping the table over.
The aid stations are long and huge, but the first person in gets the choice of their drinks and the first sponges, and the second person gets what the volunteers are still holding. So people will run through there. Last aid station, boom, 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 take every cup, and they want every thing of water on them, right? And they'll be pouring Coke on them because there's going to get evaporative cooling inside of that. But also, like Macca, who's a famous like mind game strategist, you're behind him. You're like, oh, I was expecting 15 cups to pour on myself, and I get 3. And then gets hot, and you're like, how can I do this? This person's getting a lot cooler than me. The mindset, and there's also probably an actual core temperature difference. That is well within the rules.
The rules of play.
I've never heard anyone complain about, exactly. You should have ran faster into the aid station, really. And people do that. They race into the aid station to get that first person, be the first one in to get that ability.
Yeah. I mean, the opposite also happens. When riders don't get a bottle and they tried to get it, you'll see riders then turn the screws on that athlete because they know that they want something right now that they can't have, they're probably in a bad mental state. Even if it's not that they're going to become dehydrated from missing that bottle, they're distracted, and it's an opportunity for you. I know, Tom, we're kind of drifting. Go ahead.
I gotta say this. If you're an age grouper and it's an Ironman aid station, don't go through and knock all the things out of people's hands so you can behind you. But I have.
Nate said it was okay.
I've definitely done this in a small race. An aid station might have 2 people, and they might be holding up 4 cups. And I am racing for a podium position against somebody. I'll grab all 4 cups coming in, and I'll use all 4 cups. Like I might drink all of them. But the person behind me either has to slow down, or they should have gone in faster, or they get something they don't want. And to me, in my mind, I don't think there's any, I got to only take half of these because all these people behind me need it. No, go faster. Like, be ahead of me, and then you can do that, or have space, or just stop. Like, you can go to the aid station table and get some too. There's all these choices where you can do stuff in there, and I shouldn't be limited by the amount I get, but I'm not also knocking them out of their hands. I think that's a little suspect. I
want to hear everybody's opinions on this in the TrainerRoad forum, whether it's attacking in feed zones, whether it's attacking when somebody is feeding, or when we're talking about the triathlon stuff. I want to hear everybody's thoughts on this, where they stand personally, where you stand, and then just generally where you stand too. Perhaps what you've done differs from how you believe it should go.
Some volunteers too in this situation, like, you try to take 2 and they'll be like, nope, this is for the person behind you.
Yeah.
And they won't let you do it. Which is also annoying. In that situation, I could stop. And if I really needed an extra cup, and I didn't think I was going to finish the race without it.
I think Patrick Lange grabbed the 2-liter thing of Coke at Kona, like back in 2019, and he was just dumping the whole 2 liters on himself. And after he basically cleared the whole table, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, totally.
And no one was behind him. He was just hot. He was running like a 2:40 marathon or something.
It was insane. Yeah, what he was doing. Yeah. The last point I want to cover, Tom, you mentioned squeezing in, timing drinks with your breaths. And I mean, you may be in a situation where this race is like longer than an hour, and you are truly on the rivet the whole time, and there is no time for you to rest. And if that is the case, then squeeze it in between breaths. But for me, that's a trap. If I'm trying to squeeze something in between breaths, it's because I'm not being as efficient as I should, or I'm not giving myself the chance to just be okay with waiting for the rest interval or waiting for the eventual rest. So it might be a good sign, Tom, if you find yourself squeezing it in between breaths like that, hey, you know what? I should calm down. I can relax. I'll be okay. I can take it a little bit later on.
If you like this video, make sure you give us a thumbs up.
If you didn't like this video, you can give it a thumbs down, but let us know what you would have done differently in the comments below.
If you want to see more of these videos, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want to become a faster cyclist, check out TrainerRoad.com.
Do it.